Okay, so welcome to the first installment of Sustainable Growth. And so in this first portion, we're going to talk about the steady state economy. And so these are some of the overarching questions. A really important one here is what is the actual goal of economic growth? And does growth always result in development? And it doesn't matter how the economy grows as long as it grows. And can the economy change but not grow? And could this be a good thing? So before we start, I want to go over a few key terms. So first of all, we have GDP. So this is a term that I'm sure you've heard of in economics before. So GDP is gross domestic product. So gross domestic product, this is a fancy definition, the monetary value of all finished goods and services produced within the country's borders in a specific time period. So really, the way to think about GDP, it is effectively, it's the total economic transactions that happen inside a country's borders over a given period of time. It's usually expressed over the course of a year. So if you say the GDP of the United States, it's whatever, $20 trillion, that's over the course of a year. And this tells you exactly what's counted toward that public consumption, government spending, investments, and then exports, but minus imports. So that's GDP. That's what you normally hear whenever someone's referring to economic output of a country. So you hear GDP all the time. Now GNP is gross national product. Same thing as GDP, except it's the income that's earned by a country's citizens, residents. Okay, and so the only difference here is GDP is within a country's borders. So if you have a foreign company that's located in the United States, let's say, their economic output counts toward GDP. For GNP, it's only a country's residents. So if I am in the U.S. and if I have a company over in China or whatever, but I'm a U.S.-based company, the profits that I make in China count toward my GNP. But since they were made inside of China's borders, they don't count toward GDP. To be honest, I'm not terribly concerned about differentiating between these two. The one you almost always hear is GDP. But it is important because mainly there's a reading from this week's lesson that has GNP. You can basically think of them as the same two things. Okay, so they're just a measure of economic output. Okay, so another term, quantitative. So quantitative refers to an amount of something. So if you're doing a quantitative study, it's going to involve numbers. So if I did a quantitative study of the U.S. economy, I'm going to look at numbers, jobless rates, the total GDP, the GDP per capita, amount of goods and services sold, but it'll always have a number behind it. Whereas qualitative is a measure of the sort of nature, character of something. So you can think of this as quality versus quantity. If I did a quantitative economic research, I'm looking at numbers. If I do qualitative economic research, I could look at things like, are people satisfied with their jobs? What are the overall perception of the economy, consumer confidence, that sort of thing. So qualitative is a description of the quality of something. How well are somebody doing, or how well is something doing in a descriptive way. And quantitative means you're actually putting numbers behind it. Okay, so there's quantity versus quality. Okay, so there was a reading in a video from the Center for the Advancement of the Steady State Economy, and they are advocates of this steady state economy concept, which is the subject of this first discussion. So there's a lot of information from them. The video provides a lot of insight, but I'm going to kind of boil it down to their really two key assertions here. The first one is that economic growth is no longer improving people's lives in wealthy nations. So this wealthy part is really important. They're starting off with the premise here that we have this constant pursuit of economic growth. You hear it all the time. You hear it on the news. You hear it from politicians. You hear it from business leaders. We need to grow, 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 grow. And it's something that it's almost like accepted as necessary. And they're starting with the premise of, okay, well, is economic growth, what is it actually doing? So they look at the data, and what they're finding, and the data do support this to a large extent, is that when you have a wealthy nation, a country like the United States, as overall economic growth increases, it doesn't mean that the people are necessarily doing better. Okay, and I'll show you some examples of this in a minute. And so that's the first thing. They note that in wealthy countries, and wealthy is very important here because in lower income countries, there generally does need to be economic growth in order to lift people out of poverty. But in wealthier nations, economic growth does not appear to be improving people's lives. So that's the first assertion. The second key thing, and we'll get into more detail on both of these in a minute, is that we need to maintain the health of ecosystems and the life support services that they provide. So this should sound a lot like ecological footprint, and it is. So they're saying we need to look at what economic growth is actually doing, and we need to consider the impacts on the natural environment, the ability of the earth to support the populations, okay? So those are the two key assertions. And just to show you, this whole we need to maintain the health of ecosystems, and the support services they provide, just some evidence that we're not doing that. So this is a chart, I believe we looked at this before, of the carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere from 1958 through 2017, early 2017. We've been measuring it directly for that period of time. And so the overall concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere is going up. We'll talk about climate change later, but this is considered one of the most important problems that we're facing today, is that we have this increase in carbon dioxide concentration that's causing all kinds of problems, or will almost certainly cause really big problems. So again, this is evidence that, yes, over this period of time, if you look at economic growth, we've been growing like crazy, but it's also come in lockstep with increased CO2 concentrations. So another piece of evidence, this was some research that was done in 2017, and it's a whole peer-reviewed research project. But this map, again, you don't need to see a lot of detail on here, but you can probably see this is a map of the Earth, and the green areas are natural areas across the world, and the red areas are the portions of those natural areas that humans have destroyed in the last 25 years. So the bottom line here is that humans in the last 25 years, and again, this research was done in 2017, these scientists calculated they destroyed 10% of the Earth's wilderness. So again, you don't need to know the number here, but the point here is that you look over the past 25 years, there's been a lot of growth, a lot of economic growth, but at the same time, we are slowly destroying the Earth's capacity to regenerate itself, and there's clear evidence of that here. And also, we've seen this before, but if you look at the ecological footprint of different countries across the world, you can see that, again, all of these countries here have growing economies, but they're using more resources than they have. Okay, and we can look at all kinds of evidence. Also important to look at whether or not economic growth is improving people's lives, and there are a lot of different ways to look at some of the data, but this is a chart that is on the x-axis is your income per person. Okay, so this is lower income, higher income. Each dot is a country, and then this on the y, the higher you go on the y-axis, the higher quality of life, basically. It's a measure of quality of life. So not to dig in too deeply here, but the basic trend is what's important. If you look at these lower income levels, it looks like more income generally means you're increasing your quality of life. But the main point here is if you look from sort of this point over, or even this point over to the right, so as you go from around $30,000 a year to $90,000 a year, if you look at the general trend, it doesn't appear that more income actually equates with more well-being. And that's the point. Again, to the earlier point that economic growth, once you reach a certain point in wealthier nations, it appears that a higher GDP and a higher GDP per person does not equate with more well-being. And you can see it actually looks like it sort of tails off and gets lower toward the higher end as well. And you guys are probably mostly familiar with some of this, but if you're looking at the growth in income, this is a chart of the growth in income from 1967 to 2012 again. So these lines are basically the top 5% wealthiest people in the US, the top 20%, second, third, fourth, and the bottom 20%. So these are the poorest 20% in the US. And this is their average household income. So you can clearly see that pretty much the bottom 80%, wages have been pretty flat. Whereas the top 20%, you see a general increase, and the top 5%, an even bigger increase. This chart is just a basic, very similar chart. Again, we don't need to dig into too much detail, but this just shows you the percent of the total income of each of these groups. And the bottom line here is that the top 5 and 20% have over time, particularly starting around 1980, have had more and more of the income, and as a percentage, the bottom 80% have had less and less. This chart is interesting. This is the green line here is productivity. Again, so this is 1979 to 2009. So the productivity is basically how much each average person income is generating for companies. So if you're more productive for the company you're working for, that means you're making your company more money. Okay, so you can see productivity has gone up. The overall income, again, this is since around 1980, of the top 1% has increased significantly. And the average wage overall has remained pretty flat since the 70s. It's up a few percent. But I found this number kind of shocking. If the median household income had kept pace with the economy since 1970, okay, so the economy this whole time has been going up as well. If the average household income or the median household income had actually increased at the same rate as the overall economy, that by now it would be almost $100,000 a year per person, whereas it's only $50,000 per year. So the bottom line here is the economy has continued to grow over this whole period of time, but most of the benefits are going to the wealthier folks in the U.S. And all of this, again, is meant to indicate that even though economic growth has occurred, it doesn't appear that it's being distributed evenly, and that a lot of people really haven't done much better, even though the economy has overall increased significantly. Also, some more evidence that we're withdrawing the possibility for future generations to have any meaningful quality of life. There's a chart that was showed in the video. I'm going to show you a slightly different one here. It's called the 9 planetary boundaries. Without getting into too much detail, this basically, these are 9 indicators that are meant to sort of describe these different key services that nature is providing humans. So we have, climate change, so maintaining a relatively good climate. Do we have enough biodiversity? Do we have enough fresh water, and so forth? The bottom line here is that red means we're kind of in a really dangerous point with these services, and so the bottom line is we are overusing the Earth's resources. That's kind of the short story. If you can click on this link on the PowerPoint if you'd like to, and there's a lot more information about that. Again, there's evidence that we could look at any evidence all over the place that we're overusing our resources in sort of not providing opportunities for future generations to support themselves. Okay, and so all that you can sort of summarize by saying that growth doesn't, even though we've grown the economy significantly over, basically since the country started, economic growth has occurred, but it hasn't been environmentally sustainable, and it's generally not improving the quality of life in wealthy countries. And so what they're saying is, well, why are we actually pursuing growth if it's not improving lives in wealthy countries overall? Of course, there are low-income people in the U.S. that, as the economy grows, it certainly is helping some people. But as a general rule, just because we have economic growth doesn't mean people are doing better overall. And also at the same time, if we're sort of reducing the Earth's capacity to regenerate itself using more and more resources, they're kind of like, well, wait a minute, maybe we should take a step back and think about, why are we actually pursuing growth? I mean, do we have a really good reason? Okay, and so that's really where they're starting with. They're saying maybe we should reconsider this just pursuit of growth for the sake of growth. And so they want to find a way to replace this dominant paradigm of let's just grow, grow, grow. And so their recommendation is to take a very specific approach. First of all, we need to start with quality of life and figure out how to maximize that. So if the point of growth, it's kind of assumed that the purpose of economic growth is to make our lives better, to bring people out of poverty, to give people a higher quality of life. And they say if that's really the point of growth, then maybe we just need to measure quality of life and figure out how to maximize that. Maybe it involves growing the economy, maybe it doesn't. So really what we're really trying to accomplish is quality of life. So let's maximize that. And the second thing is we need to do this within the ecological limits. All right. So the folks at the steady state economy, or people that are advocates for the steady state economy, state that what we really need to do is pursue maximizing of quality of life, so basically the highest quality of life for the most people, and doing it all within ecological limits. Okay, so that's the goals of the steady state economy. Okay, and so they actually list these conditions for the steady state economy in the video. So the essential condition is maintain the health of ecosystems and the life support systems they provide. Okay. Extract renewable resources at a rate no faster than they can be regenerated. So this is really important. Renewable resources, you think of a tree, it's renewable, it'll regrow, but you can actually cut down trees faster than they can regrow, and that's no good because then we're reducing the Earth's capacity to regenerate. So we need to, anytime it's a renewable resource, extract it no faster than it can be regenerated. Consume non-renewable resources like fossil fuels at a rate no faster than they can be replaced. And deposit waste into the environment at a rate no faster than they can be safely assimilated. Okay, and so the ones that really want to highlight here is we want to make sure we are maintaining the overall health of the ecosystem. If we're using renewables, extract them no faster than they can be regenerated. And if we're creating waste, we should create it at such a rate that it's no faster than it can be safely reabsorbed. Okay, so you think of, you generate food waste, and that can be composted, that can biodegrade, so we just don't want to generate waste any faster than it can be absorbed. Carbon dioxide, the Earth has a capacity to absorb CO2, but we're emitting it too quickly, which is why we're having increased levels of CO2 in the atmosphere. Okay, and so you think about an analogy, they go over this analogy, a forest. You can have a forest that doesn't grow, doesn't get any bigger, but it's constantly changing, right? So trees are dying, leaves are falling, things are biodegrading, animals move in, animals die, move out, whatever. So a forest can maintain a constant level of biomass. The size can stay the same, but that it's still changing all the time. Okay, and so that's their analogy for the economy. We can have an economy that's not growing, but that doesn't mean it's not changing. That doesn't mean we're not buying and selling and making things. It doesn't have to grow in order for it to develop or change. Okay, and if you think about all of this for ecological footprint, if we can establish a global ecological footprint of 1 or less, then we're maintaining, generally speaking, we're maintaining the health of ecosystems worldwide. So it's important to point out that even though they're critical of the current view of economic growth, they actually are okay with economic growth. So we actually, according to the steady state economy believers, that we can actually grow the economy all we want as long as we do a couple of things. One, we optimize or maximize the quality of life, and we achieve the highest quality of life for the most people. So again, that's one of their core goals. They're fine with economic growth as long as we're actually providing the highest quality of life to the most people, and only if we're doing it within Earth's capacity to regenerate itself. So to be very, very clear, they're critical of the current growth model that we have because these aren't considered in that model. It's not actually achieving the highest quality of life for the most people, and it's certainly not doing it within the Earth's capacity to regenerate itself. But if we could have a growing economy that does achieve all of this, that's totally fine. Okay, so it's really important to point out it's not economic growth per se, it's the way that economic growth is currently designed. And so again, optimizing quality of life should be the goal, not growth for the sake of growth. Economic growth does not mean a higher quality of life in wealthy countries. The pursuit of growth is causing other problems, and all of this must be done within the ecological limits of the Earth. And again, to be very clear, we can grow as much as we want as long as all of these, not these two, but all of the conditions above are met. Okay, so that's a synopsis of the steady state economy. I encourage you to read more and learn more from them. They have a lot of really good material, a lot of practical ways to implement the steady state economy, but that's what it all boils down to. They want to reconsider this drive for constant economic growth, and what they really want to achieve is the highest quality of life for the most people done within the ecological limits of the Earth. If we can do those two things, everything else is fine. We can grow the economy, we can shrink the economy. As long as we're really doing this, this should be the goals of our economy. Okay, and that's it for this video.